how does a typical child with ADHD look like? I'm not referring, of course, to the physical appearance, but generally, the behavior. What kind of behavioral characteristics do they have? I thought that the best way to answer this question was really to present a real case, a real child with ADHD that we saw at the clinic. Of course, I changed the name, and as you may easily understand, this is not his real photo. This is a picture I took from internet, so it's copyright free. But I found it interesting, in particular in terms of the words. It reports lazy, stupid, bad. It gives you really an idea of the level of sufferance and difficulties that these children and their families face. So let's look at this child. So this is the story of Matt, a 10-year-old. He attended the clinic with his mother, stepfather, and 6-year-old brother. He was referred by the GP, the general practitioner, to the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, CAMS, and this is often the case. And the reason why this child was referred was because he was described as extremely disruptive, both at home and at school. I will highlight in my slides in red some key terms that I will comment later on in my presentation. And importantly, Matt was really having a risk of being excluded from school because of this behavior. So when we asked parents, can you tell us how does he behave at home? They told us, well, actually, he can't sit still for more than 5 minutes. They say that he's easily bored with anything except, and this is interesting, I will be back to this later on, except with video games on the computer. They also told us that he needed a constant adult attention. His bedroom was really a mess. It takes on average more than an hour every day to get ready for school. So of course you can imagine the level of distress of the family. Interestingly, Mom said he has always been like this since the first years of life. So it's not something recent. I will be back to this later on again. Now, how about outside? So when taken out, he never walks. He always runs. Parents have to hold him by the hand wherever they took him. And on few occasions actually got lost, so quite worrisome. And basically, they say that it's impossible to have a normal life. It's impossible to go with him to the supermarket. He will run around and upset things on the shelves. And he has also frequent temper tantrums. And he has also additional impairment in other areas. For instance, importantly, he has not been invited to birthday parties in the past 2 years. So, of course, you can imagine the impact of this on the development of a child in terms of social interaction. Also, they told us that he started the swimming lessons, but he was excluded because of his behavior. So we often hear, these children are very energetic, so they should practice sport. Yes, the problem is that they cannot focus, they cannot stay on the activity for a long time. So things are not as simple as they could be. So at school, so he was disruptive. He was described as a child who had difficulties in concentrating and applying himself. Actually, teachers wrote that he's a likable, friendly boy, but he becomes really easily frustrated and interrupts teachers and other children. And unfortunately, he had several incidents and he had to be restrained on some occasions. So once again, you can imagine the level of distress. So what do we know about the developmental history? So what we call the developmental history, so the development basically of this child. So Mom said that during pregnancy, she smoked 10 cigarettes per day. Once again, I will be back to this later on. It's quite interesting. he didn't have major problem when he was born, and also he displayed with quite normal developmental milestones. So in terms of when he started walking, he started saying the first words, and so on and so forth. But they noticed that he was somehow clumsy, and so it is something I will be back later on, and I will comment on this. What do we know about the family history? Parents split up 3 years ago, and mom met Karen's stepfather 2 years ago. And mom said that Matt's biological father, interestingly, was exactly like him, but he was never diagnosed and assessed. And as I mentioned earlier, this is quite understandable given the circumstances. Now, also they said that Matt's brother was diagnosed with ASD, with autism spectrum disorder, at the age of 5. Once again, an interesting fact that I will comment later on.